You know, we've all been there, that endless, frustrating hunt for a parking spot. But what happens when that simple, everyday annoyance spirals into a full-blown violent assault? We're talking baseball bats, a family attacked. Well, that's exactly what reportedly happened in this pretty shocking case.
It really begs the question, right? How on earth does a simple, almost trivial argument over a piece of pavement
end like this, with actual weapons, a brutal physical attack, and people being led away by the police? It seems unbelievable. So let's break down exactly how things got so out of hand.
Okay, so every story has a beginning, and this one starts with something incredibly common, a small dispute between neighbors. You know, the kind of thing that usually just fizzles out.
The setting for this is the Vasant Leela complex in Kandivali, a suburb of Mumbai. If you've ever lived in a big city or a crowded apartment building, you can probably picture perfectly. Lots of people, shared spaces, and yeah, the occasional friction.
And the core issue? It was exactly what you might guess, a parking dispute. The whole thing apparently kicked off because one family parked their car in a spot that was meant for someone else. It's a classic trigger for arguments in buildings all over the world.
But this is the point in the story where things take a really dark turn. What started as just an argument, just words, very quickly escalated into a physical attack. And when you see the timeline, it's actually pretty chilling.
So, it didn't just explode out of nowhere. First, there was the heated argument. Then, get this, the accused men actually left. That could have been the end of it, a chance for everyone to cool off. But it wasn't. They came back, and that was the turning point. They came back armed, and that's when the physical assault began.
And let's be really clear here. We're not talking about some pushing and shoving. The report mentions sticks and a baseball bat. The moment you bring weapons like that into a disagreement, it's a completely different situation. It's a violent attack.
And who was on the receiving end of this? A family. The report says a man, his mother, and his pregnant wife were all attacked. That detail just underscores how serious and awful this whole thing was.
So, the obvious question is, who were the people who allegedly did this? Well, this is the part of the story that took a local incident and suddenly threw it into the national spotlight.
It turns out the people who were arrested are reportedly the in-laws of the well-known Indian cricketer Yusuf Pathan. And as you can imagine, that high-profile connection just made the story explode.
To be specific, the report identifies Yusuf Pathan's father-in-law and two of his brothers-in-law as the individuals who were arrested following the incident.
All right, so the attack happened, the accused have been identified. Let's look at the consequences. What was the official response to all of this?
Well, the police action was swift. In total, 3. That's the number of individuals taken into custody after the assault.
And those arrests were made by the Santa Nagar police in Mumbai. At that point, it was officially way past a simple neighborhood squabble. It was a formal criminal investigation. So let's just zoom out for a second. We've gone through the who, the what, and the where. But what's the bigger picture here? What's the real takeaway from a story like this?
I think the most crucial point is just how a completely normal, relatable disagreement, who hasn't been annoyed about a parking spot, escalated into a serious, violent crime. This story stopped being about parking a long time ago. It became a terrifying example of how fast things can break down.
And that leaves us with one final and pretty critical question to think about. In our own communities, in our own lives, where is that line? When does a simple disagreement cross over and become something truly dangerous? That's definitely something worth considering.